Hi everyone, Ainsley here from Small Fry Creations, where we tackle everything DIY, and this week we're flipping this hutch into this modern piece of furniture. Let's roll the intro and get to work. Let's get right into it. And like all good furniture flips, it all starts with pulling everything apart and removing as much hardware as you possibly can so that we can prep the piece for paint. So in essence, this should just come away. I love it when it's that easy. When the furniture makers design things to come apart. This is awesome. This free hutch that I picked up from Facebook Marketplace isn't going to stay a hutch for very long, as I take to it with a track saw and a router to start transforming this hutch into a buffet. Using the track saw, I cut my way around the bottom of the hutch, making sure to stay off the finish line, and where the track saw couldn't get to, I attacked with a handsaw. As always, the router will rescue the day and make me look better than I am, as I use a flush trim router bit in the router and flush up all the sides, giving me a flat bottom. I did run into an issue on the front side, as there were screws that I didn't know about, but was quickly made aware when the router started shooting out sparks and not dust. I used a chisel to remove the putty and remove the screws so that the router could get back to what it was good at, making sawdust. Alright, this guy has been chopped and dropped and we're looking much better, but we're at that point of the project where we look ugly before we look pretty. Now, in my limited experience of flipping furniture, this next step is the most important, and that is cleaning. You don't want to sand the dirt into your timber because it's just going to ruin your finish when you get up to that stage. I am cleaning with Co. It's an all-natural product. It's worked really well for me in the past, so I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to clean everything down and then I can start to sand and scuff up the surface, and then we're on to undercoat. Cleaning may sound boring, but trust me, do not miss it. With the piece cleaned, it was time to sand everything. And with sanding, you're not looking to remove the whole finish. If you use 120 grit sandpaper, this will rough up the surface, giving the primer something to adhere to. I picked up the Makita sheet sander, which will be fantastic for projects like this, as it allows me to get into corners and reach places the orbital sander just can't reach. The buffet has been sanded, cleaned, and she is ready for transformation. And my original plan was to spray the finish, but being 2.2 meters long, she's not gonna fit in my spray tent, which means I would have to do it outside. It's not a huge hassle, but it means I have to take everything outside, set up a drop sheet, a tarp, and given the surface area, I don't think it's actually going to take me too long, so I'm going to roll on the finish. I may regret it, and I may change my tact part way through, but that is at least the plan I'm going to start with. So I'm gonna go and get set up for the undercoat, and then we can get rid of this brown and start to turn her into something beautiful. Now, when it comes to paint, there are a ton of options out there. Some paints have primers in them, but I prefer to use a purpose-built primer to start, as I like the piece to have a good base, and I think it's best to start with a product that only has one job: be a good primer. When I collected this piece, I realized that I had completely underestimated the size. And to be honest, the size of the buffet kicked my butt the whole way through the project, and the time that it took to paint was no exception. So the undercoating took way too long, in my opinion. It took over an hour to undercoat. So I'm going to change tack and I'm going to spray the inside. I'm going to use the Wagner 590. Hopefully it will be quicker. I have set a spray booth up outside. The other advantage is I get to use this new attachment, which is designed to spray inside of cabinets like this. So that'll be a really good test for it. I may also spray the outside, but the outside is much easier. So I may roll it. We'll see how the video progresses. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and spray on the white on the inside. Yes, this was a much better idea. You'll notice the outdoor spray booth changed throughout the painting, and that's because the engineer saw me struggling trying to tape plastic to the fence and took it upon herself to find me a better solution. She bought some fence hooks from Amazon and a large tarp. This is a massive time saver. I just pop the hooks on the fence and the tarp has eyelets which fit onto the hooks, and in a minute or two I have a spray backdrop ready to go. Also, that little white pup running around is the latest addition to the family. Welcome, little Sherbet. I did roll the Prestige Blue onto the outside of the buffet as this was going to be quicker than all the taping I would have to do if I was going to spray. Alright, with the piece painter, we can start to turn our attention to the detail. The first thing I'm going to work on is the top of the buffet unit. You can go and buy a prefabbed timber panel from the hardware store, but I'm going to go and make my own out of this Blackbutt timber. Mine has got rounded edges, which I don't want, so the first thing I need to do is rip it through the table saw to remove the rounded edges. I love combining furniture flipping with woodworking as I think this top really sets the piece apart. The Australian Blackbutt timber is a beautiful timber and pairs extremely well with the Prestige Blue of the buffet. I made my way through all the pieces, setting the table saw and running all of the pieces through to remove the rounded edge off one side. Then I moved the fence in a little, ripping the rounded edge off the other side. I took my time to arrange the boards into a pattern I liked and that I think would work, and then I could prep for gluing. The rounded edges are gone, the timber is square, so now I'm at the point where I need to glue the pieces into a panel. The top needs to be around about 2.3 meters in length, and I don't have timber that long on hand, so I'm going to use 2 pieces of timber to each row and glue them in a brick style or a staggered style pattern to get to my 2.3. The buffet unit is narrow, so the bonus is that I only need to be 315 mil in depth, and that will fit through the thicknesser in one pass. Now when it comes to the glue up, I'm going to use a biscuit joiner just to help with alignment. It is not going to add any strength, but it will hopefully keep my stress levels down throughout the glue up. So I'm going to go ahead, get all of my biscuits cut, and then we can glue this into a panel. The biscuit joiner is a nice to have tool. It is not a must. You could either just skip the biscuits altogether, or you could use a router with a slot cutting bit, and if you're interested in using the router for this use, the card in the top right will take you to a video where I show you 5 great ways to use the router, this being one of them. The biscuit joiner does make quick work of it, and it was time to get to work with the glue up. Like all glue ups, preparation is key. Having the pieces already setting on the clamps helped a ton, and having the other clamps at arm's reach meant I wasn't running around the workshop and I could work quickly and systematically. You want to add clamps to the top and bottom so that the pressure is even, and I also use some metal bars as cauls to help keep everything aligned. Man, what a mission. The next day I could remove the clamps and contemplate how the hell I was going to move this thing around the workshop on my own, as it weighed a ton. The top is out of clamps and it's at the point where it needs to go through the thicknesser, which I have got up on the workbench because it is no way it's going to fit through in its normal position. I'm a little nervous about this step, if I'm honest, because the top is not wide, but it is really long. It is currently about 3 meters long, and I don't want to cut it to length until it's been through the thicknesser. In case I get any sniping or pitting, it's probably going to occur on the ends and then I can cut it off. But at 3 meters long, I have to start outside, which is why the roller door is up, feed it through the thicknesser, and then I will have enough clearance on the other side of the workshop to get it out. I'm also home on my own. I would not advise you doing this on your own, but I am really keen to get this project moving along, so I'm going to give it a go. If I can't, I'm going to have to wait for the engineer to come home and then she will have to help me, but heck, let's just have a go and see if I can do it on my own, shall we? Inside. You gotta go inside. You gotta go inside. You gotta go inside. Come on. Yep, I'm an idiot. I can't do it on my own. That thing's so heavy I can't lift it. I'm gonna have to wait for the engineer. Don't lift heavy things on your own. I 100% would have hurt myself if I continued. I need to stop, chill and wait for the engineer. Much better with 2 people. The engineer was just off camera helping me move the top around and balance it out as it went through the thicknesser. And I must say, I was impressed with the Sherwood thicknesser. It handled the top like a champ and had no issues at all. It was then time to cut some weight off. I mean trim it to size. I did this with the track saw and I sized the top so that it was 30mm overhang on both sides, but not the back. That would be flush so that I could have it up against the wall. I used Starbond medium black CA glue to fill any knot holes or hairline cracks, and I like the CA method as I can spray the accelerator and keep the project moving as it dries super quick. I applied a chamfer to the underside of the top, and I think this takes away the chunky feel of it, and this coupled with a small roundover on the top side provides just the right amount of detail. It was then time to buckle up and get into sanding. I started with 80 grit and worked my way up to 220 grit, and I washed the piece down with water in between grits as this removes any dust so that you're not sanding it into the next grit. For finish, I used my trusty CFP flooring, which doesn't yellow the timber and it's super hard wearing without losing the feel of the timber. To secure the top to the buffet, I went with threaded inserts. I knew the top was going to have to be removed for transport, and this will also allow for any wood movement as I enlarge the holes in the buffet so that the top has room to move if it needs. With the holes marked, I could remove the top and finish drilling for the threaded inserts. When putting in the threaded inserts, I use a little CA glue just to help keep everything in place. With the top of the buffet completed, we can now turn our attention to the doors. And when we started this project, the doors had glass in them. But what we're storing in the cabinet, we don't really want on display. So we're gonna switch out the glass and use rattan instead. And I've never used rattan, so this could get interesting. But I'm gonna go ahead and work out the process, get the rattan fitted to the doors, and then we can piece the buffet back together and start to bring it back to life. This is the first major project I have used the stapler on, and the Ryobi stapler did a good job. I did have a scrap piece of timber, and every so often I would have to clear the stapler by shooting a couple of staples into the scrap piece, and I made my way through each door and used a sharp utility knife to cut the rattan off at the end. Rattan in Australia is crazy expensive, so I ended up purchasing from Etsy and it came from Vietnam, and I'll link it below. It does take a while to arrive, but it was fantastic quality. As always, when a new skill is learnt in the Small Fry workshop, a celebration is a must. Sorry, this requires a happy dance because I love acquiring new skills, and this looks amazing. It was super easy. I just used the staple gun, stapled it. The only thing you want to be aware of is just try and pull it as tight as you can, really, but I just added a new skill. This looks great. I can't wait to put it all together and see what it looks like, which I think is the next step. This makes me so happy. I love learning new stuff. Okay, let's put it all together and see what it looks like. With the celebration over, I could install the doors back onto the buffet and work my way to an even bigger celebration. I realized that the doors could be put on in two different orientations, so it took me a little bit to play around with each one and find the best position, but I got there in the end. I switched the old door handles out for these brown leather ones that I purchased from Bunnings. All right, I've got the doors fitted and working. Off camera, I had to go back and do a little fine adjustment. Some of the doors I had to trim literally like 1/4 to 1/2 mil off the top and the bottom just to get them working perfectly, as they were sticking a little bit. They were sticking when I picked the unit up, so I envisioned that I was probably going to have to do something like this, which is why I haven't applied a clear coat yet. I have purposely waited right until the end to make sure that everything is working perfectly, and then as the very final touch, I'll apply the clear coat. What I want to turn my attention to now is the the inside of the doors where the rattan is. I need to tidy this up because at the moment it looks ugly and also it's quite sharp. I don't want it cutting anyone's hands. There was molding on the inside of the doors which was holding the glass, but firstly, it's now going to be too small because the rattan covers more of the door, but also it's the wrong color. So what I have done is I've cut 10mm strips of the Blackbutt timber, the same as the top, so it will now all match, and I will make very similar molding and screw it probably actually all the way around the door just to give it that tidy touch and for it to match the top. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Then I think I'm at the point where I can clean everything up, apply that clear coat, and then we can get this into the van and off for delivery. It's at this point of the project you've really got to push. The small details is where it counts, and I have to constantly remind myself of this. I cut a rebate on the back side of all of the pieces and then used the picture framing jig on the table saw to cut all of the 45-degree angles. Once I had one side cut on all of the pieces, I could attach my stop block setup, which allows me to repeatedly cut everything quick and easily. I attach all the pieces with screws, and I have to remember to place the screws on the outer edge so that it wasn't going through the rebate section. I didn't use any glue just in case the future owners ever want to remove them to change anything. This detail really finished the doors off nicely and brought the professional score up, in my opinion. With the doors on, it was finally time for delivery. It's finally delivery day for the buffet. Now, this guy was meant to be going to Dad's, however, we mismeasured. We were so worried about the length fitting in a lift that we did not take into account the height. And even when you take the top off, we are 1 centimeter too big to get in the lift, and you cannot get it up the fire stairs. So Dad, sorry, there's a new piece coming for you, but this one is going to a friend, so it's time to load it up into the van and deliver it, and the next time you see it, it's gonna be looking beautiful and in its home place. Is in its home, and I think it looks spectacular, and that is a wrap on this project. I hope you have liked this video. If you have, help me out by hitting those subscribe and like buttons, or better yet, watch one of the videos that's about to pop up on your screen, and I'll see you on the next one.